That got a bit of dust.
This computer right here, we picked this up from a junk store that only sells junk in Tokyo. In other words, they don't guarantee any of the things they sell, whether it's a PC or a graphics card, and they don't even show you it working at all. So you're just taking a complete gamble when it comes to buying anything from this store. However, on our used PC parts hunt that we did in Tokyo recently, I couldn't help but just have to buy this PC here when I saw the specs for the price. Now, it came in at around $150 where they had $20 off on the weekends if you purchased any of their junk systems. And when I saw the price tag of this PC, I couldn't help myself. I just had to take the gamble, where it features a Ryzen 7 2700X with the raised Prism cooler, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, a GTX 1660, and then also a B450 Tough Gaming motherboard, 600 watt power supply, and of course the case, which has its own fans installed. However, the case itself did have a busted up side panel, so we are going to leave that off. And also, before we attempt to try and even turn this thing on, we're going to give it a quick clean down. And now the reason I do clean down parts like this before I try to turn them on, if they're so dirty, I just think there's an extra risk added on where there could be some debris somewhere on the PC that could cause some kind of a short and maybe perhaps damage some parts, especially if that PC has been sitting for a very long time and there's just been new dirt, new debris that's been added into the system. So what we're gonna do right now is quickly just blow this thing down, get all the surface dust and any obvious debris that's stuck onto any of the components just out of the PC. Then we'll try and turn it on quickly and see if there's faulty parts, and if so, how much is it going to cost to fix it. So let's begin today's quest right after today's video sponsor.
Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor, VIP STD Keys, you can get activated with the Windows 10 IoT LTSC license, which will last till 2032. Also, don't forget to use the coupon code TYC for a massive 30% discount. And there's also Windows 11 Pro too. Links in the description below.
All right, so it's moment of truth time. Is it gonna be out of the mud or is it gonna be a dud? Well, let's find out. Just by the looks of things, it looks okay. Like, it looks all right. It's just I got a feeling that maybe it might work. Maybe everything does work. We're just hoping for a signal here. Come on, give us a signal. Oh, that's awesome. All right, that is a PC that pretty much is looking like it's okay. I mean, let's take a closer look at this thing. So we're just in the BIOS here and our 16 gigabytes of RAM is all coming up. Now, the problem with this PC is that it doesn't have a SSD or any storage included. So we're gonna have to add our own storage, which is gonna raise the prices a little bit, but what we could be hoping for here is I'm gonna try a Windows 10 install, Windows 10 Pro, hoping that it's been pre-activated too, and that'll just save us a little bit of money. So our XMP's booted in absolutely fine with that little boost to memory speeds there. But another thing with this PC too is that there's just no fan noises or any bad noises coming out of the PC. So all the ball bearings on the fans are absolutely fine, at least in this boot phase. And then the Corsair power supply, that's got no coil whine or any annoying things coming out of it too. So for an absolute junk gamble PC, so far it's looking absolutely amazing, but we won't fully know until, of course, we've jumped into Windows and we've started playing games, which right now we're going to install Windows and just quickly run a stress test because I'm very curious to see if the GPU thermal paste needs to be changed, as well as seeing what the CPU temperatures are. Of course, I will change the CPU temperatures themselves, the thermal paste on the CPU, but for the GPU, if we don't need to, then that could be a big, could just save us a little bit of time. So we've now installed Windows 10 Pro, and we got some really good news, and that is we got lucky, and that was the Windows 10 Pro activation worked fine, and that the motherboard was already pre-activated by the previous user. Now there's also some other good news here, and that is that the GPU temperatures, while we're running this stress test, they're hovering right on 70 degrees, and the fans are not getting loud, the heatsink's warm to touch, so it means that the GPU itself hasn't been used that much. That's my initial thoughts here, because that little sticker on the screw on the back also hasn't been removed or tampered with, meaning that someone hasn't previously changed the thermal paste either. Plus the GPU just looks like it's in really good condition. So what we're going to do right now is actually just keep that GPU stress test going and run a Cinebench multi-core stress test here just for around half an hour. But of course we may just stop this early if the CPU temperatures are going too high, if that thermal paste needs to be changed on the CPU. So we're just going to be running this stress test along with our GPU stress test. And the main reason for doing both of these is just mainly to max out our power supply and to also see if we come into any instability before we start trying to give it a proper clean down, and also start to, after that, inevitably try playing some games on this thing. So let's see how this CPU and GPU combo goes, even though they're maybe we should stop the GPU test while we do this, but just to see if Cinebench can get up and going. This is a little bit weird right now, what we're witnessing here with Cinebench, so it's kind of like it doesn't want to do anything. What a weird way to... I actually haven't seen this before. Okay, so Cinebench is working absolutely fine. The temperatures aren't spiking to anything crazy in terms of its levels. CPU power consumption looks absolutely fine for a 2700X, and hopefully our CPU temperatures will get a little bit better when we change that thermal paste and fully clean out the CPU cooler. But for what it's worth, this thing is ready for, I believe, a half an hour stress test just straight on Cinebench. And then I'll also, going for a heaven as well as maxing out the CPU, that just didn't really work. So we'll have to try another way to try and max out our CPU and GPU at the same time. Probably just do the OCCT stress test for half an hour or even an hour while I go get some lunch and let some games download in the background too. I think that's the perfect solution, the perfect efficiency right there. All right, we're gonna do that. So while we're doing OCCT, we actually had the PC just completely shut down. So what we're gonna do right now, when that happens, we've actually got to then go back to OCCT and try and stress one thing at a time. Now, the first thing that I always look at in these scenarios is the memory. So we're gonna go back to that OCCT stress test and just go back and stress CPU and memory alone, and then see what comes out of it. So now we're coming back to you guys with a bit of a good update, as well as identifying all the problems with this system. Now what we've got right here is just the final stress test I'm running, especially on the CPU and RAM, because that's what exactly was causing the system to shut down before. Now when I started cleaning it up, I went just to town with this thing, gave it a good clean down, sprayed all the sockets out, and then reseated the CPU even, and then reseated the memory. And it actually, unfortunately, just wouldn't work on the outer two slots on this motherboard. It would only, the RAM itself, the DDR4 memory, would only work on the inside two slots. And we had to settle with that. But also after reseating that memory, cleaning everything up, and then also updating the BIOS, we then have what seems like now a completely stable system. So fingers crossed that this thing does stay stable through this benchmark here, the OCCT, as well as also when we're of course playing games. That's the main thing. The GPU itself, I ran that for an hour's stress test. That passed absolutely fine, so that's not the problem. And I don't think the power supply is the problem either, because that was running absolutely fine when we just did the dedicated power supply test on this particular system. However, one thing I did notice in the BIOS update notes for this motherboard was that it said it did fix system stability issues, and that's a big one. If your system's ever having problems where it's shutting down or it's just not booting up properly, you may wish to go check the BIOS update for your particular motherboard and see if it has a fix in there. In this case, did have a few stability updates, and so that now we've updated the BIOS to a much later date, where the initial BIOS on this thing was pretty much the release date BIOS from 2019. It seems to be running without a hiccup at this point in time. However, one thing I did do coming back to the 2700X is I tried to use Precision Boost Overdrive, and unfortunately, at least with the coupled in cooler, the Wraith Prism, it didn't do too well. It basically gave us the same Cinebench score as when we first booted it up in its junk state, and it also just then ramped the power consumption up to around 160 watts, so much higher than its default base level. And then also the temperatures started going up to 90 degrees. And I noticed there's no option in there to use the negative voltage offset. So it seems like Precision Boost Overdrive has come a long way since the Ryzen 2000 series. So say for instance with your Ryzen 5000 series, or even like your 7000 series, if you got a Ryzen 7700 or a 7800 X3D or even a 9800 X3D, you can just lock in that Precision Boost Overdrive. Negative offset, usually like 20 or 30 steps, which is what I recommend most people do. And you're getting like a either much cooler CPU, or you're getting a slightly faster CPU. In this case, we're just getting nothing at all pretty much. We're just getting an overheating CPU using that. However, our CPU and RAM have now just completed this 10-minute test, which is great news because before it was crashing literally within 2 or 3 minutes whilst doing this test. And so I think now we should be either close or 100% stable. So let's go play some games and see what FPS we can get with this budget system, which also actually came up looking pretty good after we gave it a good tech yes loving.
Oh man, that guy bit the dust. Oh, wow, both of them bit the dust. This guy's all right, eh? Oh, yeah. Boom! What do we get here in Marvel Rivals? 21-2. That's not bad. I never played this game online really, so I'm guessing probably my competitors are beginners like me because I just went quick match. But we did really well here. I mean, despite only having 60 average FPS, I still consider getting 60 average FPS or more a great experience on PC. And we got the 0.1% lows there of 27, which is absolutely fine. There was no real obvious stuttering while I was playing games here. And anyhow, let's try the next game here, Counter-Strike 2, to see how good this thing can be. So now we're just testing out Counter-Strike 2, and unfortunately we are in a bot lobby here in Japan because apparently no one wants to play casual Inferno in Japan. So usually it's just always people just playing Dust, but yeah, I'm tired of Dust, man. Every time it's like you boot up Counter-Strike, Dust. And some of these other maps are just way more fun, especially like this Inferno and Office. They're really fun. Yeah, but we're in a bot lobby, but should be good enough to get some FPS figures here. So should be able to see how well our little 1660 is running. Now, one thing about the 1660 is that it is not even near its maximum here. So we could probably even up the settings to like high or something at 1080p. Because this is 1080p low at the moment. And it's doing pretty well, but it looks like the CPU is kind of single thread bottlenecked in this particular game. But regardless, we're still getting 130 average FPS, which is still absolutely fine to test the game out and just, yeah, get figures. 130 FPS, 51.1% low. That is a really good result, at least if you're into just getting a decent experience. Okay, so we booted up Fortnite. We are at 1080p low settings, 100% screen res, and the GPU is pretty much at nearly 100%. Now, coming into the game, it was a crazy stutter fest after the shaders took ages to load, but seems okay now. Hopefully we'll skip ahead to a battle and it won't stutter. Oh, it's a little bit stuttery. Boom! We go, boys. Get that dub. 115 average FPS, but it was kind of like 130 because we put that 120 cap on there, and unfortunately that just didn't make a difference to that 0.1% low. It just stuttered at times, but at least we could get a dub here. So for this last game here, we got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and we've booted this one just up at 1080p. Again, low settings. This seems to be what this combo, the 1660 and the 2700X like, but yeah, it's doing 70 average FPS and the 0.1% lows of 52. Keep in mind, I'm just not doing much at all here, just jumping around the field, but what I wanted to check was mainly that VRAM usage, the 3 gigabytes. Because we've got 6 gigabytes of VRAM on this card, is it going to be a problem? And yeah, like this is one of the latest titles out there at the moment, and using up 3 gigabytes, 3.2 gigabytes at 1080p. So I guess if you just want to play games and you don't care a whole lot, then this little combo here is going to do the job. And I mean, the good thing is, at least in this game too, just like Marvel Rivals, we're at 100% GPU utilization as well.
So after we finished playing all those games, what we saw there was on a little system like this, a budget build like this, we can still play at least relatively competitively. on some of these really popular multiplayer titles. Counter-Strike 2, that's giving us over 120 average FPS, and then for Marvel Rivals, we're getting around 70 average FPS, but even then, at those FPS levels, we're still able to have a good experience, especially in those two titles where the 0.1% lows were showing that it wasn't really stuttering at all. And then it comes to Fortnite, however, this game I just find even on the highest end systems, you can still incur like bearable stutter. But then when you go down to like a mid-range PC, it kind of gets like noticeable stutter. And then if you go to say an entry-level system, which I guess kind of what this would be, it starts to get to that level of, okay, have you tuned the system? Then it's bearable. But if it's untuned or it's a system that's even more inferior to this, it's just going to be unbearable. Like we're talking maybe an i7 4770 from back in the day, which used to be able to play Fortnite fine, but then they updated the whole game to the Unreal Engine 5, and it's just an absolute stutter fest. As we saw in that game, we're getting like 0.1% lows of 2, and even us putting the average FPS cap limit, or the FPS limit, sorry, at 120 didn't solve anything. So we still incurred those massive dips from time to time. We were just lucky that it didn't happen, say for instance, in some of those important clutch battles. And believe me, if it does stutter, it can happen in the clutch battles, and that's the worst if it does happen. But that being said, at least it was still 2. And I have seen the 0.1% lows in this game, especially on budget builds, go down to like 0, and that's when it just clonks out. And if that happens in a battle, man, bad luck. You pretty much lost that battle. Anyhow, Fortnite aside, we saw in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, that's the latest and greatest title. This little combo here, the Ryzen 7 2700X, as well as the GTX 1660, it's a good little combo for playing 1080p low settings in some of these titles in 2025. So really impressed by what we had here today. And while we're playing games, we really didn't break 300 watts at all. The max power consumption that we got with OCCT was about 340 watts. But keep in mind, we can, if we want to spend a bit of time with this thing, undervolt the CPU as well as the GPU, and we could bring down the temperatures and power consumption quite a bit. But the temperatures, at least in this environment here while we're gaming for an extended session, the GPU was reaching, I think, like 74 degrees or 75 degrees max, and then the CPU was around 60 degrees. The noise of all the components, surprisingly pretty good, though the only thing that we've really missed out on here is the side panel on the case. Unfortunately, that was already permanently damaged where it wouldn't go on properly, but also the perspex, so it wasn't a glass side panel, it was actually a perspex side panel. That was just like scratched up as well. So I find with those perspex panels, even if you treat them really good, over time, if they don't get scratched or scuffed, they'll just get faded and they'll look like complete crap anyway after a few years. So really would have liked to have seen some glass included that wasn't damaged, but at least here today, we came out of this junk gamble with absolute success. The only thing that we really had to do here was, of course, give it some tender loving care. That we had to update the BIOS, take the RAM out, clean up the RAM slots, take the CPU out, actually clean up the CPU slot as well, and then reseat the RAM and the CPU. And then everything after that worked absolutely fine. Nothing crashed out while we were playing games. The only thing that did crash out while I was playing games was this little camera that I've got here. Unfortunately, this thing overheats sometimes, but the PC itself, I'm glad to say that this junk PC that we picked up with no warranty, not even checked when we got it, everything ended up working out a-okay. We just had to add an SSD on top, which brought the cost a little bit up. But even then, everything's well under 200 USD. And with what's going on out there at the moment, with the prices of RTX 5090s and 5070 Ti's and all this new stuff, especially on the high end, just being so overpriced, it's good to see that PCs like this still exist on the low end and the entry level end, which is just keeping things affordable, but they haven't been jacked up in price either. And the most important thing is they can still give out a pretty solid gaming experience. So Junk Shop Inverse will definitely be checking out. If I'm in Tokyo, Akihabara again, be checking out what they've got for sale. And if they have something like this that's just too good to pass up, then I'll definitely be taking another dip and see what they've got for sale. So I might even try one of their GPUs next time too, just to see how we come out on top of that, because this thing was in pretty like dirty condition and not one thing was faulty. So that was some really good news there. And actually some of the components aren't half bad. I mean, got that B450 Tough Gaming motherboard, the CX650 watt power supply, and yeah, the Wraith Prism 2700X. So pretty solid deal in the end. And hope you guys enjoyed this journey too. We came out, I think, with an absolute win here today. Though, do let us know in the comment section below what would be some things if you had, say, an extra bit of money. What would some things be that you would do personally? Would you buy completely different parts to begin with? Say if you had a $200 budget or under, what would you do? Love reading your thoughts and opinions in this current market. And with that said, if you've enjoyed the Tech Yes content, you've stayed this far, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell if you haven't already, hit that like button for us, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.